I'm César Ferreira from the Department of Spanish and Portuguese, and I'm here with Professor Marjorie Agosín from Wellesley College. Marjorie Agosín is a poet and essayist and is participating in the Conference on Jewish Latin American Writers that is taking place at UWM. Marjorie, what do you believe to be the importance of Jewish Latin American writing, and how does it dialogue with your work as a poet?
Thank you, Cesar. It's an extremely complex question, especially when one is asked to be defined by a religion, an identity, an ethnicity. When I came to the United States when I was 16 years old, I discovered that I was things I didn't know possible: a woman of color, Latina, and Jewish. But overall, I believe that for me, to be a Jewish writer that happens to write in Spanish, which is the language I love, and I am enamored of this language, and I will never write this poetry in English because I will feel I'm not true to my own voice, is to be engaged with very universal themes: ethics, responsibility, accountability. For me, my Jewish identity and the Jewish experience, it's tied to this very essential concept of Judaism that I also believe all religions have, which is tikkun olam, to mend the world, to restore. And creativity is a form of restoration, is a form of transformation, and a form of birth. So for me, my experience as a Jewish woman is tied to the fundamental values of what I consider to be human. So Judaism for me, it's much more than a religion, much more than an identity, but it's a way of inhabiting the world. Also, I grew up in a family of very secular people. They were all nomads because they were always coming from everywhere, and I wrote a book about my father, who was an extremely humble and shy person, and I titled the book Always from Somewhere Else. So for me, Judaism and my experience as a Jewish writer is always being from somewhere else in Chile, somewhere else in the United States. The experience of foreignness in its widest possible of ways, I consider to be a most enriching. And that is for me part of being a Jewish writer, being almost nowhere, and at the same time at the center of the world. And also, as a young girl, we used to sit around the dinner table, and I was just enamored by these wonderful stories of my grandparents, my great-grandparents, my uncles, my aunts, and the idea to invent ourselves, to lie, because I know those grandiose tales about crossing the Andes in a mule had to be a little bit of a lie, allowed me to think that I really wanted to be a writer where my imagination could be free, where I could be lying and it would be an acceptable good lie, and where I would have the freedom to construct the person I wanted to be. So the stories of immigration by all of these Jewish relatives, instead of making me a nomad like they were, rooted me to the world of their imagination, to the world of poetry, and to the world of Spanish, because they spoke in a multiplicity of language, and I chose to speak in one. So to kind of make sense out of all this complexity, for me, the experience of being Jewish and a Jewish writer, it's an absolutely universal experience. it's an experience that touches the core of everyone. And yes, I also believe it's so very rich because it has to do with food, with history, with theology, with riddles, with mysticism. And it's interesting that even though I'm not a religious person in a conventional sense, the thing that interests me in the world the most is everything that has to do with Jewish thought and culture. And that's what I read the most. And I'm sure that that truly informs my writings.
Thank you, Marjorie, and welcome to UWM.